After surviving for centuries of chaotic conquest, stealing land not their own, killing and leaving a wake of destruction unparalleled before them, the Roman Fourth Beast Empire, Daniel foresaw, began to falter. It split into 4 kingdoms of sort, but all still the same empire. Then it became only 2, West, Rome, and East in Turkey. Finally, the West and the East would duel for supreme power. In 324 AD, Constantine the Great triumphed, and in doing so, declared Turkey as the new Rome, moving the Roman seat of power there. The Fifth Empire rises out of the Fourth, just as Daniel predicted. An empire moves its capital from the middle of one continent into another. And where did he choose to move it? Revelation 2:13, Messiah to Pergamum, Turkey. I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. Revelation 3:9, Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. To the location of the seat of Satan and where the synagogue of Satan operated in religious power. The same religious power there in Turkey that Constantine would embrace into a state religion, which was not that of the 7 ecclesias, even by their own admission. But this is the synagogue of Satan. Who was Constantine the Great? His father was Flavius Constantius, one born in Serbia, within the Roman Empire, but not in Rome. No one truly knows his parents, nor his first wives, Helena, the mother of Constantine. That name Flavius sounds familiar, as centuries earlier the Flavian dynasty ruled the empire, but this new brand of Flavians is not recorded as part of that bloodline. Yet, they retain the name. Some say they made it up, and perhaps. However, within the Flavian dynasty is the story of Josephus, the admitted Pharisee Hasmonean, Essene trained, and Flavian. Josephus was a general in Palestine, essentially fighting the Romans. He and his troops were cornered in a cave by Flavius Titus before he was emperor. In David Koresh Poise, Josephus ordered his troops to commit mass suicide, and they all did, but somehow Josephus, did not. He was captured and taken as a slave back to Rome within the Flavian household. He predicted Titus would be emperor, and he was right. In return, Titus would adopt this Pharisee into his household, giving him the family status of an emperor, making him Flavius Josephus. This same Hasmonean, whose family had defiled the temple in Jerusalem in 165 BC, installing their infused Persian religion with that of Yahuwah from Samaria, was now in the most powerful family in the world. It is this adopted bloodline from which Constantius and Constantine, the not-so-great, likely hailed. Of course, their records are absent of their bloodlines, likely for good reason. If they were true Flavians, the record would be there, but the history of Constantine's infusion of the apostate religion, which was not keeping the apostles' traditions but making up their own, is clear. He took sides against the ecclesia, the 7 churches of Turkey mentioned in Revelation by Messiah as his, even outlawing the apostles' Sabbath in the beginning, which those ecclesias in Turkey kept. This new state religion opposed the Bible and those who practiced what the apostles practiced. It is the infusion with the government and the moving of the seat of power from Rome to another continent, even in Turkey, where the seat of Satan was and where the synagogue of Satan operated, which truly defines the rise of the fifth and final empire of Daniel. This church against Scripture, against the original apostle-founded ecclesia, is none other than the synagogue of Satan, even tied to the Pharisees, possibly in bloodline, in origin. Hailing perhaps from Josephus. Constantine, the not-so-great, claimed to have had a vision of a cross in the sky in the Battle of Milvian Bridge. And since he gained victory, he credited this cross vision. However, how can anyone calling themselves the church ever claim Yahusha nor his apostles used symbols, even of the cross, which one will find in Babylonian worship all the way back to Nimrod? The Bible never sets up such symbols. That is an occult paradigm being infused. Eusebius of Caesarea wrote in the life of Constantine, a pontification of the godliness of a murderer. He wrote that Constantine was Moses, a prophet still in his infancy, to be reared in the heart of the palace and family circle of the tyrants. Except Moses did not become an emperor, did he? He didn't kill, steal, and destroy on a mass scale, exhibiting the fruits of Satan from John 10:10. He writes of Constantine, he liberated the Hebrews from bondage to their enemies. What Hebrews? He's talking about the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Hebrews, Yahudim, and are not, but do lie. They are liars, as is Eusebius's history. He calls him a tyrant slayer even. Yet, was he not an emperor? Anyone claiming to rule millions of men in blood is a tyrant, period. He writes of Constantine, he conducted himself in the same way as that ancient prophet of God, and preserving his likeness to the great prophet Moses. It makes one want to vomit. Eusebius was a clear liar. They call him a father of church history even. Only of the wrong church, the one that rejected the continuation of the apostles' practice, the Bible, the one that virtually eradicated the 7 ecclesias right there in Turkey. You can spot them throughout history, fighting against the Sabbath, oppressing, hunting, and even killing, just as the Pharisees did, imprisoning and murdering those who interpret and read the Bible for themselves. How dare we? Those who continued the apostles' practices and much more. How can anyone ignore the Crusades, the Inquisition? These are satanic focuses, not biblical ones, and its fruit well defined as Satan's. However, in 324 AD, something changed. Daniel is clear. This final empire rises from the Roman Empire, but it is different. The Roman Empire doesn't fall, nor did it, except in appearance, as this new empire Ezra exposes has many powers. It puts forth while hiding its true power. He even says, you'll see, that it appears to disappear, but it does not, because it hides its power. But this is new. The new Roman Empire, even in title in history, this marks the beginning of the 5th Empire, the feet of iron, Rome now mixed with miry clay, Nephilim ideology, and perhaps even bloodlines. The true founding of this final empire is 324 AD. And you will find their Nephilim doctrines and practices in that modern church, especially what we call the Catholic Church. We will follow them through Ezra's prophecy. The question you are not allowed to ask of the Catholic Church: why is it that the beast empire of Daniel serves as your beginnings? How is it that you exhibit the fruits of Satan while claiming to be his church? Why do your so-called missionaries throughout history have a reputation for killing, stealing, and destroying? Why were they exiled from over 70 countries for treason and usurpation? How is it that your religion is defined as causing the dark ages to hide the Bible? Why do your practices look like Persian and Babylonian religions and not the Bible? Simple. This construct, called the Catholic Church, is part of the Eagle Empire, and we will go there. The continuation of the Roman Empire that hides its power shall be exposed. Ouch, yet true. Remember, Daniel lays out a fourth and fifth empire in the interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream that is still one empire, which changes, but it's still one. It's still the same empire. Rome, iron, mixes with clay, but it's still Rome. This remains to this day, and of course we see there was a new Rome. Come on, they even just give it right to us. It's right there. And it will till the day of judgment, in fact. It takes different forms and hides its true powers purposely as a tactic, according to Ezra, by the instruction of the voice within the body, the prince demon Gog of Magog, who possesses it. Daniel calls it a terrible beast. Ezra says it, basically with more clarity, is an eagle, one of the greatest birds of prey. And the terrible one at that. It has teeth of iron, in fact. The feather, wings, opposing feathers, talons, and heads are all still the same body. We will roll out a timeline at the end of this video and complete it in the end. And that will wrap this up in a way that this will be easy to understand. Last week, we rolled out a cliffhanger, Ezra's Eagle Empire, as we're reading scripture, and we don't want to necessarily skip over. We will systematically break this down over multiple videos to support this, and to keep the videos from being, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours long. We'll keep it shorter. Ezra dedicates 2 chapters to this, expressing its importance and providing so much detail. Let's understand it. This is important. This week we focus on the angel's interpretation of this vision given to Ezra. We won't actually complete the story until after, in the next videos, we identify this empire. Don't worry. This story, as revelation, becomes one of the triumph of Yahusha. But we should all know the day in which we live, for we can fully identify where we are thanks to Ezra's prophecy. Better than anything we've ever read or reviewed, really. Better than any prophecy scholar. Ezra, the prophet, is the foremost scholar on prophecy. Let's read him. And this is his. And again, not only does he explain it, but so does the angel who gives it to him. This is important, and that's what we're going to cover in this video, the angel's interpretation. Open your book of 2nd Esdras to chapter 12, verse 7. Don't worry, we will come back and cover the verses in between. The angel's interpretation of the vision. Verse 7. And I said, Yahuwah that bears rule, if I have found grace before your sight, and if I am justified with you, before many others, and if my prayer indeed comes up before your face, Comfort me then, and show me your servant the interpretation. This is Ezra speaking. And plain difference of this fearful vision, that you may perfectly comfort my soul. For you have judged me worthy to show me the last days. And he said unto me, This is the interpretation of the vision. The eagle whom you saw come up from the sea is the kingdom which it was seen in the vision of your brother Daniel. The four beasts specifically, you will see this is the fourth and final beast, which Daniel breaks into fourth and fifth in the interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's statue from that vision. There is no conflict there, because the fifth is still the fourth. It's still the same empire, but something changes. That's all that it's saying. Verse 12. But it was not expounded unto him, therefore now I declare it unto you. Now read Daniel, in fact, and he was begging for more information and the interpretation, but Yahuwah cut him off. Ezra is given more, and this will vet as accurate prophecy indeed. No matter when they say this book was written, it's accurate in prophecy, and that alone proves it is in fact inspired. 13. Behold, the days will come, that there shall rise up a kingdom upon the earth, and it shall be feared above all the kingdoms that were before it. Remember, this is one body, though, and one kingdom, and it has been all along. There are kings, what are called empires many times within, but all the same body. 14. In the same empire, same body for all of these kingdoms, shall 12 kings reign, one after another. Before we continue, here's an interesting map, link on screen, of the 4,000-year war which mankind has perpetrated. We see these warnings not long after the flood, that Yahuwah saw that coming even then. Ezra is going to weigh in on that even in a later video we'll cover. It is an overwhelming thought to break this into only a mere 12, and of course there are more in this vision, but the real point is this eagle is one empire, which hides its true power to the end, and that's what we're really after. We're interested in getting to the heads, which we will begin identifying in the next video with detail. These empires, to lay them out only invites ridicule and speculation. We're well aware of that. And so we're not going to do it because we don't firmly know every, feather. However, one puts this together, so be it. Our takeaway here is these are associated with the continuation of the Holy Roman Empire, what would become named such, and its antitheses, which basically they are still the creation of the same body. Remember that. It's the same demon prince, Gog of Magog. It's still his voice directing the whole body, even the contrary feathers. Now, you do not have to find a document that says Constantine funded the rise of Islam or similar in order to understand this. That's not necessary because it doesn't require him and them being the same religion whatsoever. In fact, Gog is at war with Gog many times. He does that on purpose. The order that rises out of that chaos, that's where you will find him. Now, in fact, those saying this is the Christians, or another, no, it's the Muslims, and another, well, no, it's ISIS. Well, four men in a pickup truck, right? Whatever. There are clear associations here which build to this big head that we're going to cover in the next video, and the two small heads, the true powers, as far as kingdoms are concerned. They all ultimately connect to the final head. And you're going to see the timeline in the end of this is going to bring all this together. But more so, These are all reporting to the demon inside the body, Gog of Magog. Before continuing, let's look at a map of the territories or allies of Gog of Magog here, for instance. Again, we'll let everyone speculate which is which, but this will make sense. Also, I know some immediately go to Israel conquered, so conquering is not evil, right? No. We hear that. We hear that way too often. You would think that we would all be more educated than that, but unfortunately some just are not. They're so steeped in a paradigm. Israel was commanded by Yahuwah to rid their land of Nephilim tribes who had taken it over. Even Canaan is prophesied, as we covered, to have his lineage rid of the earth even. However, his is blended in with Nephilim tribes. By his own father and brothers, by the way, he was cursed with that. That was not even Noah's curse. This is his father and brothers. It had nothing to do with his skin tone either, by the way. Some try to make that about race. It's not. This empire rises from Japheth's territories predominantly. We've been very clear on that. And at least includes them, absolutely. But we could put hours upon hours into that. Our purpose here is to get to the heart of this, the three heads, the true power. So let's look at Gog, though. Here is a map of what are Gog's territories, the prince demon, the power in the last days. Yes, he reports to Satan. It doesn't diminish Satan's authority. He reports to Satan. Understand that. But the Bible calls him out specifically, especially in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Go read it. If you haven't seen our mapping of these directions from Noah in the book of Jubilees, you got to see this. The first map of the world, and there it was, waiting for us to find it. I haven't seen anybody else really attempt to map it out before. I think we may actually be the first, but regardless, it's accurate. Very well done, and you will learn much from it. It will keep things in perspective, and this is a perspective many of us lose when we're reading the Bible. We forget timelines, and we forget directions and territories, but these are important. Lineages, these are important. They do the same in trying to interpret DNA. They don't know how to interpret DNA because they don't have migration patterns down. If you don't know what they are, how do you say what anything is? You don't. You can't interpret. You can test the DNA, but you have no idea what it says because you don't know migration patterns. And these scientists do not. They ignore the Bible, the flood, and all of history pretty much of the world. Now, Gog's seat of power, the prince demon behind this final empire, who speaks from within the body, is not Russia. And we never say it is, by the way, though that is an ally, and that it is. And where he was born, evidently, he is Gog of Magog. That's where he's from, right? I mean, it'd be like you saying, I am, whatever, Juan from the Philippines. I am whatever from, California. So that's it. His power, though, doesn't come from Magog, doesn't come from Russia. That is false. And again, not something we ever teach, although some illiterate communists do try to accuse us. The power comes from Tubal, Central Europe, the Vatican, Italy, Germany, etc., and Meshech, Western Europe, or the colonial powers, Britain, Spain, Portugal, France, etc. This is not a mystery. Ezekiel tells us his allies are Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya. Those are all areas conquered by Gog long ago through colonialism largely. So no surprise that they play along as allies with Gog's scheme. Then we have the Russian steppes of Gomer to Garma, and don't forget Gomer's other son, Ashkenaz. Yes, as in Ashkenazi Jews, who play a role in this indisputably, and we covered that in Gog and Magog. They are from Japheth, not Shem, and they tell us so in their name. We prove that. Then there is Magog, which will be destroyed by fire from heaven. Now that's Russia. And that is Japheth, who bleeds into a massive amount of Shem's territory. It stole in creating the map of modern Russia, going over the boundaries that Noah Set, and he's the only inheritor of the earth who could do so. And notice the isles also get this fire. What isles? Some have tried to say, well, that it might be the Philippines. But those isles are not in this narrative as allies of Gog. In fact, some extremely inept scholars then see verse 13 when 3 areas take a stand against this prince demon Gog of Magog, and they lump them into these allies in ignorance. We've seen that far too often. They rebuke Gog and his allies, and they are Sheba, Philippines, we prove. Tarshish, Philippines, we prove. And it is interpreted Dedan, but he has no association with Tarshish whatsoever. These territories basically have to make sense, but it wouldn't if that's Dedan, because now you're into Ham. That's Ham's line. Doesn't make any sense. Realize this is ancient Hebrew, so what it says in ancient Hebrew, no vowel points, is DDN. And Tarshish has a brother named Dodan. Pretty easy, DDN. That's the right one, and he also migrated to Ophir, Sheba, and Tarshish, Philippines. Watch Solomon's Gold series. Don't even attempt to debate on this video. That is a 100-plus video series supported by a 384-page book, supported by a 300-page source book. No, you ain't gonna debate us here. You will be muted. Not gonna waste our time on that. And that doesn't do it. No one's disproven that in almost 5 years now. Watch or read, and your responses are welcome. This is essentially what we are looking for, as these empires should mostly at least touch these areas. They don't have to originate there. You'll notice we don't list any Chinese empires because they are not part of this initially. They will be in the last days. So, remember that communism is a European construct from this eagle's body, from Gog, basically, from a European son of a rabbi. So, hello, wake up, China. China's part of this now, but they were not back then. So watch our Gog of Magog videos if you haven't, and there's much more detail on that. Now, there are tons of options for these empires, kingdoms, or however one would like to term them. Essentially, they conquer areas not theirs to expand, which is classic Gog, the prince demon, like colonialism. Same tactic. They're really not even creative, you realize. We could spend many hours on this, but as we said, we can fill in the blanks on the formula for 12 of these as well as the other smaller powers, and even add to the list. That's fine. But we'll let you do that because it's just going to be criticized no matter whom we choose. It will anyway. We can especially see Spain, Portugal, France, and a lot of these as part of this body, no doubt. But we also firmly believe there is no dividing this as, for instance, one religion. And some look at this just as, oh, well, just Islam's the enemy. No. Oh, Christianity is the enemy. No. The Catholic Church is the enemy. Well, yeah, they are. But these are all within there. The Jews, atheists, all of them. In fact, even the term Jew is not even Hebrew. So, I mean, you got to be kidding why we even fall for that. Watch the origin of the word Jew. Again, we're not going there. One guy said, well, if the Ottoman Empire isn't part of this, well, you are a false prophet. Let's be clear. We aren't playing this game of ridicule, and anyone who tries that here will be muted. Period. One laughed in ridicule. Well, feathers aren't empires. Well, better tell Ezra, idiot, because you ain't commenting here. Enough of illiterate trash mouths who come in here to agitate hundreds of times every day. You realize that. You don't see most of these comments. Anyway, our channel, our rules, anyone who tries that will be muted. Remember that what we have covered so far has already happened. We are in the rule of the heads right now, I'm going to show you. And that's why we'll focus there. Feel free in comments to let everyone know what you think these kingdoms are, the 12 wings and these others that you'll see. No one has it 100%, and anyone ridiculing you will be muted quickly as well. Some have already started, and it's interesting. Let them do it. It's fine. We have no view on the smaller empires. There you have it. So back to the angel's interpretation. Verse 15 of chapter 12. Whereof the second shall begin to reign, and shall have more time than any of the 12. This one will likely be easier for many to identify, and at the end of this video, we are going to take a crack at this one, because it's a really long reign and kind of hard to miss. We'll let you also speculate on that. 16. And this do the 12 wings signify which you saw. As for the voice which you heard speak, and that you saw not to go out from the heads, but from the midst of the body thereof, this is the interpretation. Verse 18. That after the time of that kingdom there shall arise great strivings, and it shall stand in peril of falling. Now, anyone who knows Holy Roman Empire history, many even say it did fall, but we still see the King of England declaring he is Prince Elector of the Holy Roman Empire, which includes the U.S., Spain, etc., in the Treaty of Paris. I believe it's 1783. We've covered that before. These powers are still with us, according to Ezra and history. It's one body, folks. Nevertheless, it shall not then fall, and shall be restored again to his beginning. That's interesting. What was in the beginning? Well, we believe that was the new Roman Empire, which will become the same in the end. We're going to cover. Declared by Constantine in Turkey, moving the capital, which is a pretty big thing. Now, others say it was 476 AD, 150 years later, and you know what? That's fine too. Still, it works. However, we don't buy that because there's much more to this. The point is, this has been with us for more than 1,500 years regardless. Think about that. It's time we awaken to that and understand history is connected. This isn't a coming empire. It's with us and has been. Don't let them disconnect it in ignorance, ignoring the elephant, or shall I say eagle, in the room. The body still remains the body. 19. And whereas you saw the 8 small under feathers sticking to her wings, this is the interpretation. That in him there shall arise 8 kings. So we had 12 before, now we have 8, whose time shall be but small, and so these might not be easy to find, and their years swift. 12 wings, 8 feathers, that's 20 ruling bodies essentially thus far. Again, we didn't list anywhere near that, and we don't care to. Fill in the blanks, go ahead. We're going to move forward. And 2 of them shall perish, the middle time approaching. 4 shall be kept until their ends begin to approach. But 2 shall be kept unto the end. What end? The last days. These are powers attached to the wings. Now, they may not all be easy to identify, but nonetheless, Ezra saw this. But now we get to where we are headed. Literally, yeah. And whereas you saw 3 heads resting, this is the interpretation. In his last days shall the Most High raise up 3 kingdoms, empires. Kingdoms, again, insert whatever term you would like. Some people like to argue, no, those were czars. They weren't emperors. Who cares? Come on, grow up. Anyway, it defines these. Ezra defines these as the largest and very large. These are the most powerful, and again, easier to identify. and renew many things therein, and they shall have the dominion of the earth. Not every person, but this is a world power. That's what he's saying. 24. And of those that dwell therein with much oppression. Many would term that as excessive taxation, for instance, especially though really a complete financial and banking environment fashioned to keep the elite in power, making them richer and us regular folk in their service dwindling in purchasing power the whole time. In other words, slavery. Above all those that were before them. Therefore are they called the heads of the eagle. For these are they that shall accomplish his wickedness, and that shall finish his last end. Now wait till you see just how close we are to this end. Wow. And whereas you saw that the great head appeared no more, it signifies that one of them shall die upon his bed, and yet with pain. Again, still a nation today, but no longer a world empire of such power and reach. In fact, we demonstrate how it hands its power over to the second head, you'll see. For the two that remain shall be slain with the sword. For the sword of the one shall devour the other. That's the third head devouring the second we saw. But at the last shall he fall through the sword himself. And Messiah will consume him. And that empire, once and for all, will perish for good. And whereas you saw two feathers under the wings passing over the head, that is on the right side. These are the antithesis, two powers set up until the very end. This isn't about populations or even economies. This is about world rule. And though these two opposing feathers, or wings, two feathers under the wings, that's right, of sort, remain till the end, they are still this same body. Always remember that. Everything being described here, there is nothing but an antithesis that is still within the same body. It appears to stand against, but it's not really, because it's still the same body. It signifies that these are they whom the highest is kept unto their end. This is the small kingdom and full of trouble, as you saw. Again, not in population necessarily, but in power, and we will get there too. Now, let's lay this out just a little more on a timeline, which we will then continue to the end of this part of the series. We know that Babylon was the head of gold because Daniel said it was, and this is the winged lion, well pictured in that empire even. Babylon was conquered by Medo-Persia. Notice the dates. There is no lapse of any of these time-wise, and this continues, same pattern, to the end. The bear and breast of arms and arms of silver. Greece takes over the banner for the one world empire as the belly and thighs of brass, known as the leopard as well. Then we have Rome, the fourth stage of Nebuchadnezzar's statue vision Daniel interpreted. But you will notice Daniel's four beasts also demonstrate four, of course, but this is five. However, the fifth is still the fourth. It comes out of the Roman Empire. So it's still the Roman Empire, essentially. And that's why there's nothing here at all that really should be confusing. It just became infused with something else. That's all. This is the Roman Empire, which is the terrible beast known as the eagle. Even in symbol, Ezra picks up on this terrible beast and defines it further. In 324 AD, this beast became something else, relocating its seat of power from the middle of Europe all the way over into Asia. Also, it could be in Turkey, where the seat of Satan is, and the synagogue of Satan was empowered, which, by the way, Messiah mentions them in an end times context as well as in that day. Remember that. This synagogue doesn't just stay with us. It is infused with this empire at this point, the miry clay. We call it the Catholic Church, but in origin, it is the Pharisees. It even parades as the universal religion. And boy, they say that with pride because they don't know the Bible. That is the one world religion in the last days, according to Scripture. This lasts to about 395 AD. As it then becomes the Byzantine Empire. Remember, Ezra says this second wing here of the eagle will rule the longest, and this one ruled for 1,000 years, until the awakening of the three heads, which begins in the next video and the same year. Wow. So we're just warming up here still. The angel defines for us these are world powers. The final three heads are the most powerful and the true power behind this empire, which is why that is what we are really after here. Though the voice from within, the demon Gog of Magog, is the true leader of all of this. This is why it may not seem to connect when you look at some of these, yet Gog is the connection. Now, the foundation is laid to begin digging into these three heads. In the next video, we will unveil the largest head in the center, and we will support it. Then, we will identify the second and third heads, and that may surprise many. This is our interpretation, and we don't care if anyone sees it differently. This is prophecy. It's not like geography, which we can support with mega history and maps, etc. Of course, they still try to debunk that. No one has. But nonetheless, this journey will be explosive in bringing greater clarity to the final empire in which we live, which we should all know. We're there, and we are further than many think. For the first empire, the big head has already fallen, and we are at the end, likely, of the second. Again, we'll support that, and you'll see for yourself. We hope everyone got at least some more nuggets out of this last of foundational videos as we head into the full interpretation of the final eagle empire and then its destruction. More to come, and some have been asking if we can speed this up rather than one per week, and all I can say is we'll try, so keep your eyes open for that just in case. If you haven't, check out our mini playlist here on this channel. We have over 320 video teachings now, and many mind-blowing indeed. Our Solomon's Gold series is the perfect place to start if you are wondering. If this is your first, maybe even begin with part 1 of this series, as well as Answers in Jubilees. We have begun putting this in books, and we are now on our 4th book published, being read in 80 countries, with our 5th book already done and processing as we speak. In fact, it would already be out if it weren't for these lockdowns, but oh well, we'll get through it. Go to ophirinstitute.com for the many links to purchase on Amazon internationally and Shopee Philippines, as well as ebooks, of which most of our ebooks are all free. Like us on Facebook at The God Culture, _space original. And be sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to click the bell, though YouTube may not notify you anyway. Thank you for watching. See you again soon. Yah bless to everyone. In 400 BC, the prophet Ezra predicted, "For my son Yahusha shall be revealed with those that be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. Essentially, 0 BC, the era Messiah was born, and by his very name, in exactness. After these years shall my son Messiah die, and all men that have life. The origin of John 3:16. And the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the signs shall happen which I showed you before. And then shall my Son be declared, whom you saw as a man ascending. Even the end times are defined long before the book of Revelation. The Son of Elohim being confessed in the world. After 7 days, the world will be raised up. Mass resurrection of those who are asleep. The judgment seat. Evil will disappear. The Lion of Yehudah will consume the final empire, consuming his enemies with fire from his mouth. The lost tribes return. Every eye shall see him, handing out crowns and giving palms. The road to salvation is a narrow gate. Few are saved. The Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life are opened in the end. He is not willing that any should perish. The signs of the end times and origin of Matthew 24 in part. These are just some of the many prophecies in the book of 2nd Esdras, long before the book of Revelation was conceived. 2nd Esdras, written before John's revelation. This is the interpretation of the dream which you saw, and whereby you only are here lightened. For you have forsaken your own way, and applied your diligence unto my law, and sought it. That's Yahuwah speaking to the prophet Ezra. 2nd Esdras is dated at least 1st century BC, as it is used to interpret Habakkuk and blessing of the prince of the congregation, who is Messiah. This includes a radiocarbon dating testing as well of one fragment from 120-5 BC. We cover this in the introduction. This book includes 1st Esdras as well, which is also dated to the 1st century BC, when one examines what is called in fraud the Proto-Esther fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which do not remotely fit Esther, but are a match to 1st Esdras. We cover this in the introduction of this book, as well as on our YouTube videos on Esther in the original canon series. 2nd Esdras was quoted by Messiah according to the original authorized 1611 King James Version. Matthew 23:37 and 38 is a direct quote from 2nd Esdras, which is anchored right there in the margin note as the origin of Messiah's words. For Esdras is 2nd Esdras, which we explain in the introduction. Yes, he quoted 2nd Esdras multiple times. When accurately dated, 2nd Esdras proves the origin of significant doctrine in the New Testament. We cover many such instances in the introduction. There is a reason why these two books remain in some Bible canons to this day. They test as inspired Scripture. Test them for yourself. Get your copy now, free in ebook. Again, this content is free. If you would like it in print, it is available on Amazon internationally and Shopee Philippines. Just go to 2esdras.org. Download the ebook, and the links are there for your area.